is the makeup of the electorate in November at this point, and who precisely is going to vote?
Well, look, the pattern, and I think it's always pretty clear, the drop-off from a presidential year to the subsequent midterm election, historically going back to about 1988, has been between 29 and 33% drop-off. It's not always the same people who vote. Obviously, in 2016, it doesn't necessarily militate in favor of one party or the other. 2006, rather, you know, the Democrats won back Congress and had a big, what everybody thought was a wave election. In 2010, it happened with the Republicans. So clearly, demographics don't project the outcome, but the electorate will be more white as a proportion of the electorate than the presidential year, probably a little less white than 2012. I think Hispanics and African Americans will tick up slightly as a percentage of the off-year electorate, but not dramatically, not as much as they do in a presidential year. So I think it'll look closer to a typical off-year election, but there'll be some contours that are somewhat different. It's for Democrats, obviously, the one part of our base that we have to galvanize regularly are younger voters. We have to get, and particularly in some of these swing states we're talking about, 18 to 29 and 18 to 34-year-olds out to vote. There are lots of issues that motivate those voters. There are lots of issues that are, I don't want to say litmus tests for them, but to them become emblematic of the values that candidates have. So I think, for example, you're going to see the issue of gay marriage and freedom to marry be something that Democrats will use in some states because it'll be very galvanizing for voters age 18 to 40, in fact, not just 18 to 34. And in places where you might not normally think that issue will be talked about, I think it'll be communicated to voters in some of those states.
There was actually, the Harvard Institute of Politics has a survey out right now that shows that the number of 18 to 29-year-olds who are likely to vote is significantly shrinking, and you're laughing.
Did you see that one?
Yeah.
So
I relied on that one about as much as I did as the polls in October that showed Mitt Romney beating us.
Okay, but you acknowledge that it's a younger voters are a part of the Obama coalition that you need to get galvanized. So Jeremy, how do you get the Obama coalition to show up this November when the president's not on the ticket?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there. One is you don't need the Obama coalition to show up. You need a winning coalition to show up. And if you look at Terry McAuliffe's race in Virginia in 2013, we won that race. It wasn't the Obama coalition. It was a coalition that got him the winning numbers that he needed. So we don't expect there to be presidential level turnout. We do know that we need to do better with young voters. And you could have said the same thing 6 months out in 2012 about where we were in terms of the numbers we needed to get there. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think the big difference is, and I was in the trenches in 2010 sort of watching what the Democratic side was doing at the DS and the DCCC and the work that we were doing. You know, frankly, a lot of it was about resources, but in the two states where we really invested in on-the-ground data, digital resources, Nevada and Colorado, we did very well. In places where we didn't have those kind of resources, we weren't able to turn those folks out. If you look at a place like Pennsylvania in 2010, we had pretty good turnout in Philadelphia, in part because we had real resources put on the ground and doing the work there, but we didn't have it in the rest of the state. So what we've seen this year is, especially at the DSCC and the DCCC and with these individual candidates, is that level of commitment that we saw in Colorado and Nevada to get organizers on the ground early, to really invest in the field infrastructure, to make sure we're building on the data infrastructure from the 2012 campaign, and that our digital programs, you know, are sophisticated in the 21st century. So we've got a lot of work to do, obviously, to get those folks out. We don't need to recreate the 2012 electorate. We need to create a winning 2014 electorate.